Life Ministries come out of the world. Messiah people seek the truth.
Hello everybody, it's Paul Neeson with Torah Life Ministries, and I want to just welcome you and just tell you about a new series I'm doing called Yeshua Said, or Messiah Said, because I hear a lot of different things about the scriptures and a lot of different opinions, and people read the commentary under the scriptures, and you know, it can be very confusing. But when I first read the scriptures and when I was saved, all I read was the red letters. I had a red letter Bible, and I just read the red letters that Messiah was speaking, and it pretty much set things clear for me to understand what was going on and what he was talking about. The problem was, most people today aren't reading the scriptures. They're listening to either the commentary under the scriptures or some pastor at the church or something like this. Well, if we read the words of Messiah, we clearly see what he wanted us to do and how he wanted us to do it. But one of the big problems today is people, you know, they're not only not doing what he wanted us to do, but they're living opposite to that or believing opposite to that. For example, the first 5 books of the scripture, starting with Genesis, Bereshit, that means beginning. The first 5 books of the scripture is known as the Torah. Now, Torah means guidelines and suggestions and what our Creator wanted us to do. That's the Torah. But the church today translates that to mean the word law, and that's a bad misinterpretation, because now people think that means law, and Messiah's main message was we're not under the law because now I'm here. But what he was talking about was man-made laws, not the guidelines and instructions of our Creator. That's what he wanted us to do. So we're going to look at what he said and just forget about what everyone else says and what everyone else thinks. And we're going to look at that. And, you know, we have to understand, even though I'm going to say this was what that Yeshua said in the renewed covenant, many people believe, including me, showed himself several times in the original covenant in different forms and different situations. And so even though I'm going to talk about this is what he first said, you know, he had been there already and said things either directly or indirectly already, because he was in the original covenant. Now, that's another thing. Some people might say the new covenant, but it's a renewed covenant. It's not a new covenant, because with the idea of a new covenant, then you say, well, the old covenant is old and this is new. No, it comes down to the original and the restored. If you have an old classic car that's been sitting for the last 50, 60, 70, 80 years in your garage, and all of a sudden, you know, you find out that it has value in that, but the condition of it is not going to get you anything, you don't get rid of it and try to buy a new one. What you do is you restore that gem. You restore it to its original beauty and its original glory and its original intent, and then it becomes worth so valuable. Well, the original covenant that our Creator gave us, he never wanted us to do away with it. So much so, he wanted us to restore it, so much so that he said, take that off paper and put it on your heart so you know it by heart. Not until you forget it and you do something different, but so you know it by heart. So let's look and begin this series, Yeshua Said. And for those of you, whether you're understand the name Yeshua, because names are very valuable in the scriptures and very valuable everywhere, but in Hebrew the names, they have such a value of the action of what that person is. So they don't name a child in the Hebrew culture or the Jewish culture until the baby is born. They kind of get an idea of, okay, this baby is, and then they name the baby because they see the way the baby's acting. And you know, our Creator changed the names of certain people in the scriptures, and the names have a meaning behind them. So Adam, Abram, you know, and so on. So we changed the names to some of these people. Now, Yeshua, the name of our Messiah, means Yahweh saves, or Yahweh salvation. And that's what he was, and that's what he did. And Yahweh is the name of our Creator, so Yahweh salvation. However, you know, some people say Jesus. Well, what do you want to call him? Jesus, Yeshua, Messiah? The bottom line is, he told us to do something. He told us when and how to do it. I think it's important to use his name, Yeshua, and you know, but just so you understand, if you've never heard that name before, This is what Jesus said, but he was our Messiah, and here's what he said. So now we're going to look at what he said, and the first things he said. Now, we're going to look at the Gospels first, and then we'll go all throughout the Scriptures of what he said. And this is going to be a series of many videos, and I'd love your feedback, your opinions, and ideas and so on about this series. Just post them below each video if you're watching the series. We're going to look at the Gospels. In the Gospels, he said the same thing 4 different times in different interpretations of the people that wrote the Gospels. But the first thing we're going to look at Matthew. And as we look at Matthew, we see the first couple of chapters of Matthew where, it was explaining about his lineage and where he came from and who he was and what he was going to do. But then we get to him, and exactly the first words that Yeshua said in the renewed covenant is found in Matthew 3:15. And in Matthew 3:15, let me explain the situation that they had here. They had John the Immerser, who was baptizing people, and here comes Yeshua Messiah, and John right away knew that who he was and what he was, because he was the one he was preaching about that was going to come. So he knew. And Yeshua says, I'm here to be immersed. And Yochanan says, me immerse you, you should be immersing me. And here's what Yeshua said, and this is the first time he spoke in all of the renewed covenant, and this is so imperative of his message. He said, let it be this way now, because we should do everything righteousness requires. We should do everything righteousness requires. So let's break that down and look at what he says. First he said we. He was talking directly there about Yochanan or John and himself. But that's for all believers in Messiah. When you accept Yeshua as Messiah, that is what we're called to do everything that righteousness requires. And this wasn't a future tense. This was a past, present, and future tense. So everything righteousness required, when this was written, there was no new covenant. He was talking about everything that was written and given in the original covenant, because that's what showed and still shows what righteousness requires. Now, let me clarify this, everybody. We can only be saved by the blood of Yeshua Messiah. However, if we're truly saved, we should have every desire to do what righteousness requires and do his work, which leads to the next word. It says we should, and then the word do. It says we should do. Do is an action word. You have to do something. For those of you that say, well, we have the grace of Messiah, so we don't have to do anything, we're saved. No, that couldn't be more wrong than anything else, because that's not the message of Messiah. He says we should do. We have to do something. We need to take an action. It's an action word. We can't just sit back and say we're saved by the grace of Messiah, so we don't have to do anything. No. When you accept Yeshua as Messiah, you should have a desire to do everything that's righteous. Then we look at the next word, everything. We should do everything. This is coming right out of the words of Messiah. He didn't say we should do some things. He didn't say we should do just what we feel like doing. He didn't say certain people have to do certain things. He said we should do everything, all of it. And then he goes on to say that righteousness requires. And where are you going to find out what righteousness requires? It's right there in the Scriptures. Just as it said in Timothy, all word, all scripture is profitable for man. There was no new covenant written when this was given. It was the original covenant, the Torah, that shows everything that righteousness is required. So if you truly want to understand what righteousness requires, you have to read and understand the foundation of all of Scripture, and it's what Messiah himself taught from was the Torah, the first 5 books of the Scriptures. So it says, let it be this way now, because we should do everything that righteousness requires. So let's go back and look at the passage here. It says, then Yeshua came from Galilee to Jordan to be immersed by Yochanan and John. But Yochanan tried to stop him, saying, you are coming to me, I ought to be immersed by you. However, Yeshua answered and said, let it be this way now. Our Creator has a plan, and we have to fulfill it. So let it be this way now. We should do everything that righteousness requires. Those are the first words of Messiah in the renewed covenant, and that's what we're going to kick off this series, Yeshua said with. And Yochanan let him Now let's look at Yachanan. Let's look at John the Mercer, John the Baptist. What happened here? Well, it says in Scripture he's one of the most righteous men that was ever born. It said there was no evil inside of him. So he was born, and what happened right away? He didn't even reply to Yeshua and say, okay, if that's what you want us to do, that's what we'll do. He didn't even reply. He just took an action, and he did it. Because it goes on to say here, as soon as Yeshua had been immersed. So Yeshua said to Yachanan and said, let it be this way now, because we should do everything righteousness requires. And then what happened? John just let him and baptized him. Let him be baptized. Amazing. And then it goes on to continue. It says, as soon as Yeshua had been immersed, he came out of the water. At that moment, heaven was opened, and he saw the Spirit of Yahweh coming up upon him like a dove, and the voice of heaven saying, this is my Son, whom I've loved and am well pleased with. Why is he well pleased with him? Because he desired to do everything that righteousness required. That was it. So we have to be like Yachanan or John, and we have to immediately react and take an action and not question why. Can you explain this? I don't understand. Can you tell me what's going on? No. Immediately when Yeshua speaks, you act. That's what we got to do. And we're going to continue with this series and see all the things that Yeshua Messiah said. In this series, Yeshua said. And so if you have any comments or questions about this, post this below the video. But I'm really excited about this series because I really want to clarify a lot of the things that people have been, misinterpreting or saying, but Paul said this, but the scriptures say this. Okay, we know all that. Well, what did Messiah say? Because if you took every single word off that page, including the commentary at the bottom, and it was only the words of Messiah there, isn't that what you want to know? So that's what we're going to be looking at. All right, this is Paul Neeson with Torah Life Ministries. Thanks for checking us out. I'm really excited for the future teachings in this series. And until then, everybody, shalom, shalom. Now we continue and we see here in the 4th chapter of Matthew, the second thing Yeshua Messiah said in Scripture, in the renewed covenant here. It says in 4:1, let's lead up to exactly what happened.